organizations that benefit from the proceeds. Good morning, Northeast Radio SD, Steve Jurens. We have some other special guests with us live now. We have with us Joe Vitek with Divine Providence of South Dakota. Good morning.
Good morning, Steve.
Thank you again for joining us. I always appreciate having you in here.
Thank you so much.
You bet. We also have with us Luke Smith, a volunteer of Cornerstone Church. Good morning.
Good morning.
Great Thank you. Yeah, appreciate you.
Thank you.
We've also got on the line with us, we've got Nate Blaylock, a life coach. Good morning. Are you coming through?
Good morning. I'm here.
Woo, all right. Technology's working. We're feeling good. Thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate your time as well. And maybe Nate, could you, being a life coach, that's got to be pretty interesting and maybe complex kind of position to be in sometimes. And you're right here in South Dakota too, Nate. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Yes, I am in Sioux Falls. My wife, Maggie, and I have a private practice counseling agency here in Sioux Falls. And so my wife's a therapist. I'm a certified life and recovery coach. You know, I was a high school basketball coach for a lot of years, so did coaching in that regard. And it's been really, really fun to kind of do it in a different capacity and kind of act like a thinking partner and an accountability partner for a lot of my clients, just working on life changes or goals or direction, but specifically in the space of addiction or unwanted habits that we get stuck in, and how we can really make some progress and find some freedom there.
And so what we're talking about today is the event coming up, Pure Desire Watertown. We've talked with Joe Vitek a bit in the past interview. Joe, could you tell us a little bit about the event that's coming up? And then we'll talk again with Nate about how he kind of connects here.
Yeah, you betcha. Next week on Friday, the 16th, we have a youth event that's going on at Cornerstone Church from 6 to 9 p.m. And that's for youth. We're suggesting ages in the 7th through the 12th grades. We encourage parents to come with if they want to. And then we have two other events that are independent, running simultaneously. We have the women's event also at Cornerstone from 8:30 in the morning until 4:30. And then we have the men's event that's happening at Holy Name of Jesus in the Parish Center from 8:30 to 4:30 as well. About 5 folks from Pure Desire coming out of Tennessee. We're bringing them in, and they're going to lead all of those sessions. And so it's going to be a great time, and we're in partnership with the churches I mentioned, and it's just going to be a great event for Watertown, talking about a very necessary topic, pornography.
Mm-hmm. And so maybe Nate, could you tell us a little bit about how you kind of connect with this event that's going to be coming up?
Yeah, totally. So I mentioned we have a private practice here in Sioux Falls, so I'll start there and kind of work backwards. But my wife, Maggie, is one of 2 CSATs, or Certified Sexual Addiction Therapists, here in the state of South Dakota. And we work a lot with just unwanted sexual behavior and how that impacts individuals and families and relationships. And, Pure Desire is really, they are the leader in the nation in the space of education and education with communities and churches, really on this topic, and providing help and assistance and resources on a topic that a lot of people don't talk about. And I've known about Pure Desire in my own life. They were instrumental in my own life and recovery, starting about 13 or 14 years ago. And we've gotten to partner with them in various ways. They have an amazing website and resources and podcasts out there on the topic. And we are just so excited that they're coming to a state like South Dakota to help educate.
So when you talk about recovery, I think that's a word people kind of, they correlate with addiction, of course, and, drugs and alcohol, and that's what they're used to. Could you talk a little bit about maybe what your story is, or how that does correlate with pornography?
Yeah, 100%. And so you're right. I think when we hear the word addiction or recovery, there's maybe some more socially normal topics where that comes up, in alcohol or drugs or gambling. And, often, if maybe you were to go to work and mention, hey, I struggle with alcohol, but I'm getting some help. You might get hey, that's great for you and way to go. But on a topic like pornography or other unwanted sexual behavior, it's a little bit more taboo and not as socially acceptable to talk about. And, for me in my story, pornography was something that was a part of my life from the time I was a young teenager on, and nobody was really talking about it. And so I felt this tension between, hey, this is really normal, but I don't really like how I feel afterwards and how this is affecting me and my emotions. And that was something that came to a head for me about 14 years ago when ended up impacting my family and my marriage, and really had to take a step. I landed in the office of a CSAT, also like my wife's certifications, and just said, I think this is a bigger deal than I've ever given it credit for. And began my own journey in recovery and finding some health and freedom in an area that I thought maybe was never possible to find freedom. And it's really changed everything for me.
So when people are thinking about, I think it's interesting that it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, but yet it is taboo in a sense to talk about. Obviously millions and millions of people are affected and dealing with it. When you're finding out that it's a problem or a problem for your marriage or relationship, how do you start to face something like that with your partner or create that conversation? Is there any positive way to even start something like that, Nate?
Yeah, it's an awesome question. And I guess I'll start with something you said there about just the industry itself. It is really wild to me that is such a common, pervasive topic, yet because of the shame, I think, tied to it, right? Not a lot of people are talking about it. To your point on the size of the industry, the average annual porn revenue is greater than that of the NBA, MLB, NHL, and NFL combined as far as the average revenue, right? And when you think about the majority of porn sites are free, that is just a staggering statistic. And so this is a common thing. And I think, I'm not here to insinuate at all that anybody using porn needs help or is in an addictive cycle with that can't stop on their own. But it's far more common than we give credit for. So I think, part of the reason that this unwanted behavior, this addiction thrives is because it's in isolation. And so taking a step, whether it's a friend or a partner, and just saying, hey, this is impacting me. This is impacting us, maybe in ways I don't even know about yet, is a great first step to be able to bring that up. And there are, I knew nothing about a CSAT years ago, but there are professionals who can really help in a targeted space like this to help get some traction.
And so we were talking with Nate Blaylock, and we've also got in studio with us Luke Smith. Cornerstone Church is helping support this event. Luke, tell us a little bit about being a volunteer and where you step in.
Yeah, so I've worked at Cornerstone previously from 2001 till just June, and primarily worked with families from kids all the way up to the last number of years, primarily with men. And so the stuff that we're talking about right now with Pure Desire, I've had a background in that too, helping guys walk through that. Trying to, from our perspective at Cornerstone is obviously from a Christian worldview, which has a specific sexual ethic that we're trying to say, how do you live according to that? And sexuality has been so interesting because of all the addictions that we've worked with. It's not one that you're ingesting necessarily and have total freedom and autonomy from it. It's more like almost like food stuff where you need food. Every day you're going to eat food. And at what point is it a necessity and a pleasure and then a problem? And your sexuality is very much like that. Your sexuality, it's in you, it's real, and it's good, and it's a necessity, and it's a pleasure. And then at some point it moves into, in content, in a Christian worldview, say, can be a problem. Not because it's bad, but because we don't always know how to handle it. And so long in the church, if you go to a church, you're going to see that a lot of different churches already have their calendars built with liturgical calendars about what you're going to be talking about, what you're going to be saying. And oftentimes it does not include sex stuff. And so we don't get there. Or you have this many resources and you've got to decide, how are we going to use this and what are we going to spend our time in? And pastors, when they're trying to figure this out, they don't always think about pornography and saying, wow, what's the impact of addiction and recovery? And there's stigmas around it that make us, feel shameful, even if we're sitting there and want to raise our hand and say, that's me. I have that. And then when we start looking at the stats, which Nate can talk about that, I mean, we're so thankful to have Nate and Maggie in Sioux Falls be able to say, hey guys, we'll come alongside you and speak into this and even be a resource to Watertown and other, South Dakota in general, as people that can speak into the reality of the problem, but also the reality, the hope that, there is answers to this. And it's not just a random shame-filled problem, but it's something we can pull out of the darkness. And the culture's already normalized the issue of porn. It's everywhere. Okay, kids are talking about, they say early exposures from 8 to 11 years old on average. You're trying to figure that out with educating in the church and in the family and in school and all this. Just it's complicated. And we're saying, you know what? The culture knows that, and they're doing stuff in that world. But now we want to talk about how do we deal with it and normalize that conversation and say, we don't have to feel shamed about it. It's actually, that is the problem. Let's pull it out. Let's begin to talk about real life solutions. And is there really hope? The Bible talks about this idea of the renewal of the mind, that you can have your mind renewed. I'd love to hear Nate talk about that. Those are things that they're working on and seeing real results. And that's why Pure Desire is coming in here. We want hope. I got so many guys in this town that I've walked with that just, it can, and not just guys, students, kids, women, families that feel like there is no hope. Mm-hmm. There is no hope. This owns my life. And when you start feeling that way, you've entered into a world that God would look at us and say, that's not true. Mm-hmm. With God, there's always hope. And that's why we're doing this.
Yeah. Well, I think obviously it just like substances, it can affect people many different ways and families and relationships. And it seems a common pattern from what I've kind of read about is creating like false expectations within relationships is like one of the common number one factors, and really ends up creating a division within a lot of relationships, and starts creating demands from partners and different things like that. So when you've talked with like some of the males, and maybe some of them are chauvinistic and, being from traditional areas anyways, when you start to break that down, how's the luck on that? How's that work for you? Are people receptive to what you are talking about?
It's a great question. And for me, I think that number one, we're saying we're not trying to preach to everyone in Watertown and saying you're bad. We're not saying that. We're saying this, that there are people though that we believe in Watertown are saying, I need help and I'm tired of this. And I know it's something that has been influencing my life in a way that I don't want to be part of. So for me, I'm a former football player down in South Dakota State. That's how I got here. And I lived a life that was trying to figure out what it meant to follow Jesus and be in the world. Mm-hmm. And it was glorification of just whatever the secular lifestyle that includes sexuality. And you're not looking at people and saying, you're bad or something like this. No, that's life. And it's normal. And the concept of chauvinism or just male sexuality, it's like, that's everywhere. It's stereotyped on every movie and show. And that's from the little, whatever. What we realize though, is in those moments where somebody's serious and you're talking to them about life, we're praying for opportunities where we get talk to them and say, what's really going on? Mm-hmm. What's really driving your life? Who are you really? What's really going on inside? And that's where, when you start getting to that level of conversation, that's what we're looking for. And so we're hoping this Pure Desire event will open that door for a lot of people that maybe they're sitting on the edge and wondering about this stuff, and maybe they even joke about it. And maybe they're living life where that's normal, just to be kind of the fringes of it, what's acceptable, but they're longing to go deeper and say, is there really hope? And we're saying, yes, there is.
All right. Joe Vitek, I thought of a question for you specifically because of your background in law enforcement, but just because you've probably seen such a wide range from minors to you've seen sexual assaults and abuse and so many different things, when dealing with sexuality. What are, I guess, your thoughts and, over all those years, what have common themes or patterns have you kind of noticed over all this?
Yeah. Again, good question. So you're right. I've seen a lot.
Yeah.
So about 40 years worth, in different places. And, human beings are human beings, right? And so there's all kinds of brokenness out there. There's all kinds of sexual brokenness out there. But what we want to do is I want to look ahead and think about future generations. And one of the reasons I'm sitting at the table is with Divine Providence of South Dakota, which predominantly was addressing folks that had, brokenness from having been sexually abused as a kid. And then invariably, oftentimes we don't have the best judgment. And so mostly the females that I was working with, they would hook up with a boyfriend or a husband that had sexual addictions, i.e. pornography. And they would come and they'd say, well, I don't know what to do with that. I don't like it, but I don't know what to do with that. Or, my husband or my boyfriend wants me to watch this with them, right? I don't know what to do with that. And I didn't have any resources for that. I didn't have any tangible resources for that. And then we were working with some men that were also survivors of child sexual abuse. And all those guys had brushes with pornography at different degrees. And again, that sexual brokenness was prevalent. And again, we didn't have a whole lot of resources for that. So Luke and I partnered several years ago, mostly in 2018. And he can tell you a lot about that event because he set it up. And we found each other there. The God led us to partner there. And so we actually put it in our strategic plan at Divine Providence that we need to do something for men specifically and also for everybody that's got this, right? Well, it's a big problem. It's a huge problem. And the Barna Group, which is a very reputable research team, partnered with Pure Desire. Luke is the one that made me aware of it. And we decided, you know what? We need to address this. We need to bring it to South Dakota because people need resources. They need a way to have hope and to have wholeness and healing in their lives because it's a big problem. 51% of the men that go to their pastor, one of the statistics they quote, they're married guys, right, that are struggling with pornography. Well, that's a clue that that's an issue. And then, of course, the kids, they should be going to a trusted adult, their parent or a pastor or someone for advice on this. Well, guess what? They're getting their advice from the internet and their friends. Well, in the age that Luke is talking about as far as their first brush with pornography, I think that's called puberty. Mm-hmm. And so if we don't talk about this and have open, authentic conversations about this stuff, we're really kind of rolling the dice as a society, as a community, and saying, well, we just hope that they find their way. Mm-hmm. And so by bringing these guys and gals from Pure Desire to Watertown and partnering with them and partnering with folks like Maggie and Nate Blaylock, what we're doing is we're hopefully giving folks some resources so that they're not alone. Because oftentimes when you're in a situation like that, you feel like you're alone. The same thing with sexual abuse. You feel like you're the only one that this is happening to, and that's not the case at all. It's very widespread.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's perfect because it made me think of Nate. I was going to talk to you about a moment when I was doing some research. I had come across like Sex Addicts Anonymous, and it just opened up that there were I didn't know that that group existed, and there's quite a few groups out there and so on, which must mean there are so many people affected. Is that something that you're aware of? And also, are you seeing then like trauma and those kinds of things must be kind of wrapped up into some of these addictions then?
Yeah, it's just both really good points and questions. There are lots of resources out there, and SAA is one of them, right? Sex Addicts Anonymous, there's SA, there's SAA, there's a lot of other types of groups where you can go find community around these things. And, I think to your question on trauma, I think, man, trauma shows up a lot of different ways for us, right? And we all have traumas. Sometimes they're big traumas that are easy to identify. Sometimes they're smaller, kind of a stacking of things that maybe we didn't get, that we didn't even know we should get. And I think about what both Luke and Joe have said around, children. I think, one of the scariest stats for me that Luke referenced a minute ago is that the average age of exposure to pornography, first exposure, is between 8 and 10. Some of the studies show it as early as 8 years old, right? We did a great job in the 80s and 90s educating through programs like DARE. We all grew up, having DARE in our schools. I learned about the detriments of drug use through DARE. And as a result, I made choices to stay away. And I think as technology has changed and we're putting iPads and phones in the hands of kids younger and younger, sometimes not having resources to educate can be a form of trauma. And, I'd say an event like we're hosting here, even if this, you would say, is not for me, but if you have kids or if you're an aunt or you're an uncle, come gain some education and some tips and some tools for how to help the younger generation that's coming behind us in a world that we didn't really have to deal with growing up with a phone in our pocket all the time. And what are the potential detriments of that? And how can we help this younger generation thrive and stay really healthy? I think that's a really important part of this topic and conversation.
Well, Nate, I want to make sure too, if folks do have questions, you're with Known Coaching. You guys have a website and so on. People, if they do want to track you down and ask you some questions.
Yeah, thank you. So Known, KNOWN, knowncounselingservices.com. Feel free, on the top right, there is a contact button. If you have questions, if you're curious, if you want to have a conversation, feel free to fill out that form, and my wife or myself or somebody from our team can get back to you and just begin a conversation. And we've got some resources on our website too, of books and podcasts and other things that, even if you want to jump on there and just do some of your own research, we would love that.
Very good. And Luke, I know you had talked a little bit earlier about, being with Cornerstone Church for a while, and we've talked about this in other interviews, but even if you, even if you're not into religion or a certain denomination, that doesn't matter for these events. It's more about just helping the common man, if you will.
Absolutely. And I had a thought when Nate was talking, when he mentioned the idea of DARE as a kids program. As a culture, we have had a push towards educating kids sexually, and it was actually trying to normalize the idea of using things like porn and overexposing them to things as if that would actually help them. We're saying, no, that is exactly not the solution. There's actual dangers with pornography. And I would love to hear what Nate would have to say about the idea for the person that's sitting out there, just like what you're saying, that would say, what's the big deal? I mean, come on, get off of it. It's like, what's the big deal with porn? I think most people that I've met, that's kind of the attitude, is like, well, if you use it, it doesn't really matter. Who's it hurting? It's private. It's just my own private thing. Nobody's getting hurt. Why do you care? And say, how would we speak to somebody who may be asking those questions or think about that? Because not everybody in Watertown we know is a sex addict or a porn addict. And we're saying we want to educate everybody that wants to. Specifically for us, we're coming from a Christian worldview, but we feel like it's not just a Christian issue. This is a societal issue. In saying the science is starting to back that up, and saying, is that true? And I'd love to hear what Nate would have to say about that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think a couple first thoughts come to mind. Number one, we've hit on it, but porn isn't just a fringe issue. You know, more than half of adults and even a greater share of young people are exposed to it on a regular basis. And, you know, even for those that don't struggle personally, these trends we're talking about today affect partners, families, workplaces. You know, early exposure changes how generations view sex or intimacy or consent long before we get into healthy relationships. We're seeing a massive influx in our office of college age or young adults struggling with something called PIED, which is porn-induced erectile dysfunction, because this has just been a normal part of how they've learned about sex and sexuality, and it's wired their brains for sexuality in isolation, which isn't, you know, as many of us would know, it's not the way relationships work. And so, you know, it's a neurological issue. So again, there are many different facets of this I could get into, that even if you're hearing this and going, hey, I don't struggle, or yeah, what's the big deal? A little bit of use. There are downstream impacts in our society and communities that we really need to be talking about if we want to have healthy communities.
Very good. I think too, it's, I mean, just because of the commonalities, but if you quit drinking or you quit smoking, you start to realize how food tastes different, or you can breathe differently. And it's like, oh, I didn't think it was so bad, but now that I'm on the other side, wow, I can't believe how bad it really was. And it kind of seems like that's what you're saying, sort of.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, I'll be brief with this because I'm kind of a brain geek and I could talk about this for a long time. But one of the things that any process addiction, but specifically porn, does is we flood our brains over and over with this massive release of dopamine through a habit like porn or something else. What can happen is our brain and bodies develop tolerance, right? And so we begin to feel like I need this amount of a feeling just to feel normal. And so what happens is, yeah, the day-to-day joys and the emotions and happiness, it begins to be like, you know, if it's not that, I'm not feeling anything. And so I see that time and time and time again in my office as I work with men who we begin to take some steps toward health. They're like, man, I feel different, right? I feel the highs of life again. I feel the joy. I don't feel so flat or depressed. And so there is a huge correlation there. That's a great point.
Yeah, I never actually thought of like a psychological tolerance in a sense, but that's sort of, I guess, what substances do as well. But yeah, that's very interesting. Thank you for that. Well, I want to make sure, Joe, do you have anything else that you want to put out there?
No, just a huge thanks to you guys for helping us get the word out to the community. I guess, well, maybe I would say, you know, if we haven't resonated with you, you know, then I'd ask you the question, why should you go if you don't feel like you have an issue? Well, you should go because, well, quite simply, knowledge is power. Mm-hmm. And, you know, that's a good thing. And then the second reason I think you should go is because, well, you're a human being and you should care about other human beings. And the truth of the matter is nobody really cares about how much you know until they know how much you care. Somebody said that.
Yeah.
And it sounded pretty good to me. Yeah. And then I guess the last thing, you know, that I would say to you is do it. If you're not going to do it for yourself, do it for your kids. Do it for your loved ones. Do it for a friend. Because I can assure you that it's very prevalent and it might not be out in the open, but you would have the opportunity to help someone. And that's a big to do because none of us get through this world alive, right? Alone and alive, right? Mm-hmm. And so do it because you're a good neighbor. and you become more educated, and therefore you're in a position to help somebody.
Very good. Luke, any closing words from you? Or
I'm just super thankful that we're at this place where we're getting closer to the event, getting to meet people like Nate and Maggie, and I'm pumped because Nate's going to be coming up to the men's event, and we'll actually get to meet face to face, and as well as with the Pure Desires staff and spokespeople that are going to be coming. For me, this is it's super encouraging because I've done a lot of work, and it's always had to be kind of behind the scenes. In 2018, when we were able to do the with Pure Hope, which is a different organization, but we were able to show the Heart of Man movie over at the Watertown Event Center and bring in parenting in a sexualized culture. It was instrumental in getting things started, seeing what Joe and her whole crew have done with Divine Providence in helping minister in Watertown behind the scenes in the whole northeastern South Dakota, impacting people behind the scenes. What's really exciting for me is this is not going to be behind the scenes. This is way out front and saying, we're not ashamed of this. We have nothing to be ashamed of, and you don't either. There is hope, and we want you to come and find freedom and at least start the journey. It's not like this is going to happen like bam, but it's a journey in thinking about life in a different way, thinking about sexuality and relationships in a different way, and finding wholeness. And we're grateful. Thank you.
Very good. So the youth event is going to be January 16th, right?
Correct.
And we do encourage parents to attend and learn with the teens.
Yeah.
And then the 17th is the men and women event, right?
Correct.
Separately, if you will.
Right.
And you want people to register for that?
We do. There's a QR code. If you have Facebook, just go to Pure Desire Watertown. There's a QR code there. Scan it. And just let us know so we make sure that we have a lunch for you, because otherwise you might show up and we didn't order your lunch because we didn't know you were coming, and so that would be sad, wouldn't it?
Yep.
And so everybody likes to eat. I'm thinking, but do that for us. There's posters all over the place that we've been putting out, and you can just scan the QR code there, and so go ahead and register. The other thing is that first come first serve. We're offering some scholarship money. So this event is just the beginning. It's not a one and done. And specifically, one of the things that Pure Desire did with the Barna Group is they identified the need for churches to step up. The need for pastors to step up. Your people in the congregation sitting in the pews, they have struggles, and we're not addressing those things. The church is not addressing those things. So we're going to offer scholarship money to churches so that they can offer these small groups, these self-help groups, support groups, if you will, utilizing Pure Desire materials that's been in the business for 20, 30 years. And so it's good stuff, and they can certify, I'll call it certified facilitators to lead small groups, support groups for folks in your church. So we're not saying, hey, go to Cornerstone for this or go to Holy Name for this, but in your church. And so we'll offer that to you, first come, first serve. Divine Providence is offering that, those scholarships. And so it's about $800 per church. And so come on out and again, get it while the getting's good. Mm-hmm. And, come on out and help your people to be the people that they were created to be.
Very good. And we want to thank Nate Blaylock on the line for helping us out as well with Known Coaching there in Sioux Falls. Thank you as well for joining us, Nate.
I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
You bet. All right. Well, we thank everybody for coming in, and what you guys are doing for the community is really a complex situation, and I think you're helping a lot of folks. Well, although simple, it is kind of complex and simple, isn't it? So, yeah.
Life is like that.
You made me rethink a little for a second. But no, thanks a lot for what you're doing. And I think we've even got, do we have another interview maybe even yet?
I think so. I think we got one more next week. Yeah, right before the event.
Very good. Yeah. Perfect. Then we'll even maybe learn a couple more things. So
absolutely.
Very good. Well, Luke, Joe, thank you guys very much for coming in. And that'll do it for Northeast Radio SD.
Thank you, guys.